thing billowing, bursting forth with the power of 10 billion butterfly sneezes.
This is Wine, Money, and Song. And if you're interested in wine and you want to learn about the best values in wine, please subscribe. So we're going to talk today about the purpose of wine. And what I mean by that, what is his role in society? How is wine drinking assimilated, and what part does it play in our lives? Now, first I want to differentiate between wine and liquor. It's very, very different. Both of them have alcohol in them, but the alcohol is different in the concentration that it is. Liquor is very strong, and it's almost 40 to 50% volume of alcohol, while wine is 12, 13% alcohol, and it's not knocked back, it's not drank very quickly like liquor is. And when you the assimilation of alcohol is much more forceful in liquor. When it's that concentrated, your body cannot handle it, cannot assimilate it that quickly without having that feeling. And from what I understand is when you get high from alcohol, that feeling that you get, it's a response of your liver throwing off toxins to your brain. That's a little scary to me. I found that recently. So the slower absorption of alcohol with wine differentiates wine from liquor. And I remember the first day I had my first job in a wine shop in Queens. I sat down and I'm looking at the shelves and all of the different bottles. There's hundreds, thousands of different bottles, different colors, and I'm just sitting there. And the owner said to me, "What are you looking at?" And I said, what's the difference between all these things on the shelves? What's the difference? Are they all different? Well, aren't they all the same? And he said to me, "Understand this. This is your first day. That the people who come in and buy liquor, who buy a bottle of scotch, buy a bottle of cognac, buy a bottle of anything that's really strong in liquor, the reason why they do that is when they drink it, they get a physical feeling from it. And that's it doesn't taste good. You ever see when people drink liquor, they go, ooh, when they drink it fast. That's got to tell you something." He says, "Understand, anyone who comes in there and that's what they're drinking it for the effect it has on their body and their mind. While the wine drinker is generally very different. The wine drinker comes in and they try different wines. They don't drink the same brand usually all the time, and they do it for the taste. And they sit down and they have a meal and they drink the wine. And the one thing I can say, wines taste very different. Each wine tastes different. While you can buy scotch and you can line up 5 scotches, and not many people can tell the difference between it. And especially vodka, because vodka has no taste. So understand the difference. Liquor is people want the feeling, the sensation. And they either want to feel something or numb themselves. And understand that. He says, but with wine, people generally come in, they enjoy the taste, and they want to sit down to a meal and relax with it. Or they have friends and they talk to each other and they enjoy it together. So hopefully that puts something in your mind, the difference between wine and liquor. Now, I didn't mention beer. Beer is something else that's culturally different. It's like a rite of passage. When you're in America, when you're in Europe, you drink beer and you get together, and a lot of people in college, it's a rite of passage. You just keep drinking beer, and the people who drink beer, something like 5% of the total beer market drinks like 3/4 of all the beer that's sold. So that's showing that there's a lot of there's a small amount that are heavy users, but they drink the bulk of the volume. So that means they drink to get high too. So just remember that. So let me first go into wine. Wine was popularized, became into being for a number of reasons, but in the Middle Ages, they found to preserve fruit, grapes especially, they didn't have to throw them out. When they squeezed it and fermented, it became wine, and you could store it and you could use it later. And it didn't have to be refrigerated, and it lasted. And that was one way of economically doing something. But a key thing with wine's popularity was there was very little high-quality drinking water back then, if you really think about it. And a lot of people died from the drinking water, and it wasn't healthy. And there wasn't a lot of other beverages. You know, you couldn't buy mineral water out of the supermarket back then. It wasn't available. You didn't have sodas and competing beverages back then. And the way wine was important, wine was a disinfectant. Alcohol is antiseptic. And it was one of the safer beverages to drink. And Louis Pasteur once said, wine is the most healthful beverage available to mankind. And we're still drinking it. So hopefully he was right. And that's why it was popularized in the Middle Ages. And when the French Revolution occurred, the church controlled a lot of land, and they controlled almost all the vineyards. And think about that. The best vineyards were kept by the Pope, and he used those best vineyards to make wine for himself and to be owned by the church. And that's how the wine business really began in Europe. The church had great influence over it. And handed down, when people came to America, they brought that heritage with them of drinking wine with a meal. And if you ever see pictures of Italian families in Europe, even when they have little children sitting down at the table, 10 years old, 12 years old, they pour them a little wine and they put water in it just to dilute it. And that's to get them used to drinking wine and learning how to handle wine and being part of a normal routine and a regular meal. And by the time they get older, they can handle wine without mixing water into it. And that's how they're brought up. And when the influx of people came into America, they had the wine heritage. So that's something that is very, very important to understand, that Europeans spread their culture here in America, and it caught on. It took a long time, but once people understood it, they enjoy it now too, and it's becoming part of our lifestyle. So the one thing to understand about wine, when people sit down and have wine at a meal, it helps them socialize. It relaxes them, which is different than liquor. It's like a super stimulant that if you see people take 2 shots of rum or something, and you see all of a sudden they become different people. With wine, unless you're drinking a bottle or two, you're not going to find that behavior, because the alcohol is assimilated much more differently. It's drank over a longer period of time and with food. And food helps slow down the metabolism of alcohol. So that's how I see the role of wine. The purpose of wine is to sit down, and I don't think you should really look at going for the top level quality all the time. What wine does is wine normalizes us, it socializes us, and it makes us sit down and talk to each other. And that's a good thing nowadays. Now, I remember seeing a movie called Moonstruck, which was in 1987, I believe it was. And it really affected me. I thought it was a great movie. Cher won Best Actress, and Olivia Dukakis won Best Supporting Actress for it. And it was about an Italian family who was very dysfunctional, but all the decisions were made around the table.
Rose, where's the one, huh? I never seen anybody so in love like Cosmo was back then. He'd stand outside the house all day looking in the windows.
Why are you drinking so much? Oh, man, you give those dogs another piece of my food, I'm gonna kick you till you're dead.
And you'd be eating dinner, you'd be eating a meal, and there'd be wine flowing, and you would talk about the problems, talk about what you've done in the day, and it's very, very dramatic, the movie. And there's an actor in the film, Vincent Gardenia, who's the father, and who was having an affair with a woman, and his wife found out about it, and there's a clip there where, right at the table, she says, I want you to stop seeing that woman. And the father, Vincent Gardenia goes, looks mad, slams his fist down, and says, okay. And only that happens at the table, in front of everybody. And about Vincent Gardenia, I serviced a restaurant in Bensonhurst in Brooklyn called Tommaso, and he just passed away because of COVID about a year ago. And he was a dear friend of mine. And he was a great restaurateur and a lover of wine. And he also sang opera. He was a formerly trained opera singer, and he loved wine. And he had a lot of friends in Italy, some of the famous producers, Giacosa, Gaia, he knew them. And he was, I became very close with him. And one day I was talking to him, and he mentioned that Vincent Gardenia lives in Bensonhurst. And I said, he's a movie star. Was he living in Bensonhurst? And he says, well, he's from here. He's not married. So when he's not on set making movies and stuff, he lives in his mother's basement in Bensonhurst. And I said, what? I go, a star? He goes, yeah, he's not married, and he knows everyone here. He's only home maybe a few months out of the year. So I found that very interesting. But the movie shows wine's role in being part of the family and talking to each other and socializing, and that when there's problems, it's worked out at the table with food and with wine.
I can't marry you.
What?
If I marry you, my mother will die.
What the hell are you talking about? We're engaged.
Loretta, what?
All right, the engagement is off.
In time, you will see that this is the best thing.
In time, you'll drop dead, and I'll come to your funeral in a red dress.
Will you marry me?
What?
Where's the ring?
Thanks. Loretta Castorini, will you marry me?
Yes, Ronnie. In front of all these people, I'll marry you.
Do you love him, Loretta?
Ma, I love him awful.
Oh, God, that's too bad.
What happens is you get so much...
I know, darling. Hey, let's go. Loretta and Ronnie. All right, Rosie, here we are. Thank you.
So, to summarize, I feel strongly that wine's purpose in our lives is to sit down, slow things down, and talk to each other and have a nice glass of wine. And it doesn't matter if it's a first growth Bordeaux or if it's a Grand Cru Burgundy or if it's a great Barolo. That's not what it's about. Wine elitism, that's 1% of what transpires in people's lives. What you want every day is to have a nice glass of wine, easy to drink, and everyone can talk, relax, and be themselves. And that's wine's purpose.
With chains upon my feet, you know that ghost is me, and I will never be set free as long as I'm a ghost that you can't see.